With indoor competition taking place to kick off this year's track season, the 60 metres is a good way for lesser known sprinters to showcase their talents, with college students even dropping times in the 6.4 range in recent years. It's been a trend for the more well-known athletes to avoid competing in the 60 metres altogether, but this leaves the question about just how fast these athletes could have ran indoors if they competed at their peaks. Among the greatest sprinters ever, Usain Bolt and Johan Blake never competed indoors, while Gatlin and Asafa Powell did compete indoors but never got close to the times they managed outdoors based on their splits. Gatlin competed in the 60 metres at World Indoors in 2003 and ran 6.46 in the final to take the gold medal. 9 years later in 2012, he won World Indoors again by finishing in the exact same time. His 60 metre personal best was 6.45 set in 2003, but his indoor time never turned out to be much of a predictor of his outdoor time, since he had a 100 metre season's best of 9.97 in 2003 and a season's best of 9.79 in 2012. Gatlin's fastest 60 metre split time in a 100 metre race was 6.34 in his 9.77 race in Brussels in 2014. Asafa Powell ran his 60 metre personal best of 6.44 in 2016, a year where he went on to run a season's best of 9.92 in the 100 metres. Powell's fastest 60 metre split time in a 100 metre race was 6.33 in his 2008 personal best run, where he finished in 9.72. Even though we see with Gatlin that a season with a 9.7 outdoor time doesn't necessarily translate to a blazing indoor time like 6.3, I believe that when Asafa Powell was in 9.7 shape, he could definitely have crept into the 6.3 range indoors. Powell was a consistently fantastic starter, so it's a shame he never put the world record under threat when it came to the 60 metres. Johan Blake's fastest 60 metre split was 6.35 set in his personal best race in 2012. Blake never competed indoors at senior level, and a reason for this may be because Jamaica tends to have warm weather year round, so there's less reason to run indoors when all training can be done outdoors. Blake also trained with the fastest man in the world over 100 and 200 metres, so prioritising 60 metres might not have had much benefit since Blake often ran a well balanced race and came on strong after 60 metres while his opponents started to fade. I think Blake would be a 6.4 sprinter had he ever placed his focus on the 60 metres. Marcel Jacobs ran a 60 metre split of 6.41 in his personal best race in the 2021 Olympic final, and 6 months later he equalled this time with 6.41 in the World Indoors final. This makes Jacobs one of the rare sprinters who is able to match his indoor 60 metre time to his best 60 metre split in a 100 metre race. This increase in 60 metre speed shown by Jacobs within a season had people expecting Jacobs to drop even faster 100 metre times in 2022, but unfortunately it wasn't to be due to injury problems. Another athlete who came close to achieving an equal split is Christian Coleman, whose best 60 metre split is 6.32 from Doha in 2019. While his best indoor 60 metre time is the 6.34 world record he set in the 2018 US final. Coleman's record was set at high altitude, but his second fastest time of 6.34 was set in regular conditions, and he is one of only 2 sprinters to run 6.3, with the other being former world record holder Maurice Green, who ran 6.39. 2018 was Coleman's first year on the pro circuit, and I suspect that the experience he had at college level, where athletes run all out early in the season, may have helped him to perform at a level that most pro athletes don't reach in February, since they're preparing to peak later in the season. One of only 2 sprinters to run a faster 60 metre split than Coleman was Su Bingtian, who clocked 6.29 en route to his 9.83 personal best run, which currently stands as the fastest 60 metre split ever. Su ran an indoor 60 metre time 6.49 earlier in that same season, which is surprisingly slow by his standards, given that he has a personal best of 6.42, which he set in 2018. In 2018, he ran his then PB of 9.91 a few months later. Some people were calling for Su to focus on competing indoors again, so he could break Christian Coleman's world record, but even if Su ran his best 60 metres, there's no guarantee that he can translate his greatest 100 metre performance over to indoors. Despite this, it isn't too far-fetched to think that 6.33 is within his capabilities under optimal conditions. From 2009 to 2021, Usain Bolt held the record for the fastest 60 metre split time in a 100 metre race, with the 6.31 he clocked in his world record race in Berlin. Bolt was a latecomer to the 100 metres, running his first 100 metre race at age 21, but the speed he attacked the start of his 200 metre races with meant that he was no slouch out of the blocks, so when he reached 60 metres, he was usually running at the fastest speed of anyone in the field. Even if Bolt's starts were inconsistent at times, the coaching he received by Glenn Mills meant that he focused heavily on the execution of his drive phase, which helped to create an optimal race pattern. One purpose of his drive phase was to delay reaching his top speed until later in the race, which in Bolt's case was around the 70 metre mark. This raised the question that if Bolt was to change his race pattern, so that he aimed to reach his top speed between 50 to 60 metres. Just how fast could he end up running through the 60 metre mark? Or would a rushed acceleration actually hurt his speed, given that he takes exceptionally long strides? Bolt always showed reluctance to compete in the 60 metres when asked by TV presenters who believed it would help improve his start.
I wasn't the perfect start. I think if I gotten a better start, it would have been pretty much 9-7 low.
What you could do to help you do your start, right? Try running a few indoor meets.
Could work. Could work. Ask coach if I'm going to run indoors, but we never really discussed it. I've asked him if he would let me try one year, but
not
we
much
never really
need
got
for indoors in Jamaica, is there?
Perhaps he didn't want to give any other athletes the idea that he was beatable, since they would definitely fancy their chances to beat him over 60 metres, much more than over 100 metres, where he was close to invincible by athletic standards. To run a time that would still stand as the 60 metre world record today, Bolt would have had to run 6.33, which is just 200 slower than the split in his world record run. Do I think he was capable of doing this in his prime? With Bolt, I think anything on a track was possible, so in my opinion he could have broken it if he competed at the distance often enough. Let's not forget, Coleman ran 3 long indoor seasons before he broke the world record. Even though the indoor 100 metres is rarely something athletes compete in, Bolt holds the record in the event, being the only man to run under 10 seconds indoors when he ran 9.98 in 2014. In this race, he looks clearly ahead of Trell Kimmins at the 60 metre mark, with Kimmins proving he was in 6.4 shape earlier that season. If this is anything to go by, I think Bolt would have defeated a lot of the best 60 metre sprinters in the world, even while he was having a recovery year where he barely raced. So for Bolt to compete in the 60 metres when he was at his peak in 2009, I think it was in his capabilities to run 6.33. What are your thoughts on the one world record Bolt never broke? Please leave a comment and thanks for watching.